The National Association of Automotive Component and Allied Manufacturers is concerned about the 30% US tariff potential impact on South African automotive exports to the US. Thousands of jobs could be lost in the automotive industry as the 30% US tariff takes effect tonight at midnight. Well, South Africa was slapped with one of the highest tariff rates by the US, and to discuss the effect of the tariff hike on exports to the US in the automotive sector, South Africa's automotive sector, we are joined by the CEO of the National Association of Automotive Component and Allied Manufacturers, Renai Moothilal. Great to have you, Renai. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Yeah, morning. Thanks for having me.
So this is it certainly isn't good news at all for the motor industry. In fact, the motor industry has already felt it in the first quarter. But you say the immediate impact of the raft of new import tariffs on direct component exports from South Africa to the US is most likely to be felt there first. Perhaps you want to explain a little bit more to us that it'll be felt in the US rather than here at first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Leanne, as you can imagine, auto components are safety critical items. You know, we all drive vehicles every day. The kind of production and exacting standards and tolerances that go into components mean that you can't simply switch on supply and switch off, just kind of quickly. So contracts that are already in place are likely to be honored. I do think the real danger that we faced with is that over the medium term, South Africa becomes less of a competitive destination for production and export. And we are already seeing new contracts not being taken up or being cancelled, particularly into the US market. And at stake is probably the most important manufacturing sector in the country. The component side of the autos value chain, more than 85,000 jobs across the country. And as you start seeing, one domino falls, then the rest start dropping as well. What we need to do is to urgently find ways of shoring up the value chain.
Yeah, certainly. Indeed. I mean, already looking at statistics, the automotive sector has seen an 80% drop in the US exports in the first quarter of this year. So from a vehicle export perspective, there may likely be a more immediate impact here in South Africa. We're already seeing that. So if we're seeing that 80% drop, I mean, talk to us what we're in for. What is this impact likely to be?
Yeah, look, I mean, already the vehicle platforms that are exposed to the US market, we know that they've already gone into levels of volume reduction. In the components value chain, we know that plants have had reduction on contracts being called from them. All of that has already led to a situation where employment is kind of impacted. There are already a range of workers who are on short time. And we expect if the situation continues, then naturally job losses will result. I think the environment for autos production in South Africa has not been a difficult one has been a difficult one over the recent past. At least in the value chain, we've seen multiple plant closures over the last 2 years. More than 4,000 jobs being lost for a variety of factors, but in the main, coming down to a reduced volume environment, and this US situation will only exacerbate that.
Yeah, you know, it's a very, very difficult situation. Do you feel government is doing enough? We know that, I mean, I was reading an article saying that it feels that the business sector is doing more than government. Is this, I mean, give me your views on that.
Look, I mean, as sector stakeholders, we work very closely with the authorities, particularly the DTIC. And it is a difficult situation that they faced with. There's many governments across the world scrambling to try and find solutions with the US government. So I think for us, the first priority is, of course, a continuation on prioritizing some level of diplomatic solution and finding a mutually beneficial way of maintaining that US relationship. I mean, you've got to understand, outside of the UAE, the US has for a long time been our biggest export market. So, I mean, that work has to continue. Yeah. And the recent announcements around a range of stabilization measures, including and export help desk to look at diversification. Some of the short-term cash support measures that are being spoken about are useful, but time is of the essence. Those need to come into play as soon as possible. I do think there are obviously wider policy levers that can be pulled on, especially now that we are starting to see exposure to export markets in a high growth environment is really good. But as we start seeing contraction across markets around the world, there's probably some space for us to look at better utilizing our domestic vehicle market.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that close on 65% of total vehicles sold in South Africa are imported products. So I think we should find a way of ensuring that of those vehicles produced domestically, a greater consumption happens here in South Africa, and that on its own has significant spill-on impact into the value chain and will be better for component manufacturing, where the bulk of real economic benefits exist, whether it's in the form of increased employment, new business opportunities, technology, skills transfer. All the magic really happens in the components value chain.
Yeah. If we look at the sort of where the US fits into the bigger picture, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Germany is still right up there in terms of who our biggest export market is. If it's Germany, the UK, there's also India, there's China. So we do have a lot of regions. I know we need we'll talk to which other regions we can take effective, but obviously the United States is a big crux of that, perhaps around about $9-10 billion, which is a lot of money. But which other markets can we look at? I mean, where else should we be looking? I know you say domestically, but what about regionally?
Yeah, so look, firstly, let's acknowledge the US is a 10% market for our exports, so it's really significant.
It's significant.
I do think, like you mentioned, there's probably a greater urgency to find more contracts within that EU market, which on its own is something we've got to respond to, as we know some of the carbon adjustment measures and other barriers that are coming up in terms of new energy vehicles. So our domestic producers have to kind of respond to that, be strong in extracting more out of that EU relationship. And I think you've touched on some of the other emerging regions, whether it's in the East and the like. But I do think maybe now's the time to get really serious about that African market. Yeah. We have been talking about it for a very long time. And it probably comes on the back of South Africa and the regions, the continent's advantage in terms of some of the critical minerals used in future technologies. We need to quickly be locking in those kind of arrangements and making Africa and South Africa part of that a real hub for some of the production that is being based on these critical minerals.
Yeah.
So, but again, these are not. It's not something that's going to happen next week. And priority remains trying to work with existing regional trade arrangements and finding avenues to enter those more than we currently have.
I mean, the numbers we can talk to, because you spoke about what it's worth in automotive products to the US in 2024, 28.7 billion rand worth of automotive products, of which 4.4 billion was attributed to the components section. And you've been making a very, very important point about those automotive components, which is a big problem. I mean, if we look at that sector, the components sector, how many people are we talking to in terms of employment?
Yeah, you're looking at about 85,000 really highly skilled jobs, right?
Yeah.
And plants across the country. I know that the Eastern Cape is particularly hard hit in terms of some of the products that come out of that region and already going into the US market. And it's really kind of high-tech, high-quality products that are going there.
Yeah.
We already are seeing, although there's no electric vehicle production here in South Africa, we know there's definitely components coming out of South Africa going into the US into electric vehicle plants. There's high-end assembly line products. Unfortunately, one of those companies I know definitely has been impacted in terms of replacement and new contracts, already had something stopped. So what has been a really fantastic growth story for South Africa over a long time, currently in danger. And I think all hands on deck to try and shore things up.
Yeah, it's amazing how you say, about high quality stuff that we are manufacturing and sending out there. European leaders are fearing the arrival of flood of cheap goods that could undermine its local industry as this race to seek alternative markets intensifies. Are you also concerned? Is that a point that we should be worried about?
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely. As many economies across the world look to find alternate sources, if we don't pay attention to some of the cheaper or more dangerous goods being imported into the country, you could easily find our markets being taken up by that space. I mean, consumers will ultimately look for value in what they're purchasing, and if these kind of imports come in without any level of control and restriction, then not only is it a loss to our manufacturing sector, but probably levels of danger in the consumer space.
Yeah.
And it is something for us to be concerned about. I mentioned already that we've lost a significant amount of domestic vehicles produced in South Africa being bought by our consumers. We need to reverse that trend for vehicles and also components that come into the country.
Have there been job losses as yet with everything that we've spoken about? And then, of course, that midnight deadline. I mean, what are we looking at in terms of job losses so far?
Yeah, so I think we've observed over the last 18 to 24 months more than 4,000 jobs already lost in the value chain.
Yeah.
This particular one, we expect, at least in the immediate short term, the restrictions will be more on short time and people immediately working. But like I said earlier, 6 to 12 months, we can easily start expecting to see significant levels of jobs being cut.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, you've even got the Reserve Bank predicting close to 100,000 jobs. What happens if we scale down operations? I mean, obviously that kicks in this evening. Are we seeing, we've heard the factories have already scaled down their operations until we find an agreement, until there's other places to do business with. But what does it look like right now?
I think there's a lot of concern. Of course, employees, workers, those particularly if you think about a component production environment, it's not really the huge kind of big companies. So individual investors, individual entrepreneurs that are exposed to this market, high levels of concern, work closely with particularly the customers in the US to see of any particular arrangements that could be put in place in that economy to continue the production. But I think the point has been made. Ultimately, it will be a case of find alternate markets, make better use of the domestic market. If not, then the natural cuts will start coming.
All right. Renai, thank you. Thanks for talking to us. Renai Moothilal, who is the CEO of the National Association of Automotive Component and Allied Manufacturers, speaking about the impact, and they are severe impacts, of the tariff hike on exports to the US and what they'll have on the South Africa's automotive sector. Remember, South Africa is not the only country going through this, as the US sits negotiating and increasing tariffs. In fact, we're going to focus on what's happened to India. That's another story that even more developments happened overnight. So it's a global story, but a very worrying story at that.